all I heard was crickets, crickets
Yeah.
everywhere. God, I'm all alone. I'm all alone. And I remember walking to my back bedroom, and I have a big walk-in closet, and I walked around there, and I just crumbled to the ground, to the floor. And I remember beating my chest and saying, God, you have got to help me carry this. You've got to carry me because I'm not able to do this. And the scripture that came to my mind, clear as a bell, was, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you're with me.
Mm-hmm.
Your staff are there for my comfort in the midst of my enemies of fear, doubt, and all this stuff. You've prepared a feast for me.
Yeah.
And you have blessed me, God. I turned a corner.
Mm-hmm.
I turned a corner, and I was able to look at life that, it's beyond the grave. Nancy and I talked about me moving on with my life and not just being stuck grieving. And she says, the life ahead of you, I'm going to be in eternity. I'm going to be at peace. I'm going to be with the Lord, and I want you to be okay. So yeah, suffering, and what Peter's talking about here, my gosh, he's talking about what this church is going through, what the church is going through and stuff as well.
Well, and what's interesting, he's talking about a universal thing. And I think one thing all of us share in common is suffering. And sometimes it's more poignant, sometimes it's more intense. Do you think, or did Nancy think, that the reason God healed her from the cancer was to take care of her parents? And because both of her parents, she got to survive both of her parents before she finally succumbed to the cancer. And, it's just interesting to me because it seems like when there's a healing like that, you would think it's for these grandiose reasons, like to reach universes or galaxies, but it seems like in her case, the grand purpose was just her love for her parents. When you talked about her body being transformed, it reminded me of my grandpa, my mom's dad, who died at the age of 99, and he had a skin condition, just an annoying little skin condition, the last month of his life, like a scabies kind of thing. And as soon as he passed, all of that disappeared, and he just was radiant and smooth. And it makes me think of Corrie ten Boom, who in the concentration camp in World War II, her sister Betsy, who was just emaciated, but when she passed, her body was completely filled out and radiant. And it's like God's giving these little glimpses into the reality. And it makes me think of, Paul saying, like to the Thessalonians, we don't grieve like others who have no hope. And the hope isn't baseless. It's he actually gives us tokens and signs that, you got a glimpse of Nancy's resurrected body, or at least Nancy's healthy body. And at the very beginning, you talked about, going to missionary school, and how can you be provided for by a God you can't see, feel, or touch? And then you get a token of a $900 gift from someone you barely know. Or it's just interesting to me how God gives us these glimpses into reality. Somebody told me recently that worldwide, the most popular letter in the Bible is First Peter, but in America, nobody can relate to First Peter because we're so focused on not suffering. In other countries who are persecuted, they're like, yeah, right on. This book is so encouraging. So I'm just going to read 1 through 3 of chapter 2. It says, rid yourselves of all malice and deceit, hypocrisy, envy, slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. How can we say that the Lord is good when life is so hard sometimes?
He identifies with their pain without being evasive or fatalistic. He speaks directly about their suffering. And I think it's interesting that now that you have tasted that the Lord is good, because you've tasted that, you want to pursue that.
Mhm. It seems like the big question on the table when we are suffering is the Lord actually good? And
Yeah.
and can we taste of His goodness? Or uh, and people say, how can you believe in God with all the suffering in the world? And yet Peter and then and here you too are talking about how the goodness of God actually breaks through like sunlight.
Yes, yes.
In
You
the
know,
dark.
he refers to their suffering. I counted it like 16 different times. He brings comfort and solace and practical counsel to them. I think it can be, his teachings is similar to what Paul the Apostle says, for I consider the sufferings of this present time
Mhm.
worthy, or compared to the riches of the coming glory.
Mhm. Can you help us with say anyone who's watching this and is going through some suffering, whether it's internal or external, but they're not feeling the comfort or the solace? How do we get from a place of feeling far from God to being comforted?
I think for me, if someone's out there and walking through this, or can't sense his presence, can't feel it, just understanding and knowing that, my gosh, when Peter, James, and John were on the Mount of Transfiguration, and Jesus transformed before them, and they saw him, talking to Elijah and Moses about him going across, and Peter saying, "Man, this is awesome. Let's just stay here. Put a tent up for them, you and us, and now we'll just hang out here." When they walked down from there, they came to the situation of that little boy that was demonized, and the darkness and all immediately it changed. I'm sure they forgot about that transfiguration when they were focused on this little boy and their inability, the ones that were there to exorcise that demon from that boy. I think it just boils back to for me personally, it was just me understanding that this God I serve isn't defined by what I'm going through right now.